welcome to another damn anime podcast. My name is Nick, and I will be your host this evening. Here with me is my good buddy Joe. Joe, how you doing tonight?
Doing all right, man. A little tired, and my voice is a little sore from a company party the other night. So, yeah, lots of talking and lots of drinking. So, yeah, it's sorry if I sound a little off today, but that's
You,
the majority of the reason why.
so you're looking for a new job?
The party was good. You know, I put it this way: at least I'm coming back to having a job.
Oh,
You
good.
know, the party didn't go south. Um, but yeah, I'm doing all right. How about yourself, man?
doing all right. Yeah, doing good. Nothing to complain about. I had some barbecue today, which was really good. I spent a lot of money on it, but it was delicious. But I got to take about half of it home, and I'm excited to eat that tomorrow. So that's pretty much the highlight of my time so far. That I've been trying to watch a lot of movies recently. For some reason, I've just been trying to catch up on movies that I've had on my list for a while, and even just stuff that's popped up on YouTube, or rather, not YouTube, on Netflix that I've found. Be like, oh, I'll just give this a try while I'm eating or whatever. Um, so I haven't had as much time. I haven't taken as much time to watch as much anime here recently as the season draws to a close. I think I'm pretty much decided on what I like the most and what I'm gonna be finishing up and stuff like that. There's not very many things that I'm gonna really try to get all the way, make sure that I finish completely. Um, but there's a few things. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's been a pretty good season, I guess, overall. I am looking forward to next season just to have something new. But yeah, there's a few things that from this season I definitely am going to be able to take away as a maybe longer term memory. But how about you? What's uh what's been good to you so far?
Oh, this season's been pretty stellar for me personally. I mean, there was just a lot of, a lot of good stuff that came out. A lot of that stuff got dubbed, which also saved me time and effort. And so yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with the way this season's turned out so far. Um, yeah, I guess for the most part, I mean, I've really, like Tomo-chan was pretty solid this season, and really digging. My Saturdays have been really solid. We got like saving 80k gold, the reincarnation of the strongest exorcist. Got Irma Kun. I think like Friday nights might be the Nagatoro. The current season. Uh, you have My Hero and Blue Lock, so like it was a really solid lineup for the weekend for sure. Uh, as far as like the best thing I watched last week is probably the episode 20 out of 21 for Iramakun, season 3. That was a highlight for sure. It was kind of like the main events, just kind of no spoilers really. So it's just main events have finished, and it's kind of a filler episode is the best way to put it. It's just like, yeah, everyone's recovering, doing their thing, and it's like the episode's broken into like two parts. So you get Irma hanging out with I think his lead is his name,
Yeah,
and it's just their banter and they're like just the way they hang out together. Like I would watch a spin-off with those two characters by themselves.
yeah.
It was pretty funny,
Sometimes
and
like those kind of episodes, even though there's not a whole lot that happens, it can make the show feel more real because it is just kind of just so chill and mundane. Maybe that I don't know. It doesn't feel like it feels more like real life, I guess. In that way, and it characterizes those characters a bit more than you're used to seeing.
oh yeah, no, for sure. It's in the second half of the episode was uh main character and the a potential love interest, Armory. She's the student council president, and her character's always been kind of fun. So I'm easily able to ship those two. But yeah, it's just it's just cute interactive scenes, and it's just like, yeah, it's all very solid. So I was very happy with that. But like, I was actually also pretty impressed with Tomo-chan.
Me
Second to
too.
last episodes, I think it was 12,
Yeah.
um, out of 13 this season. So yeah, and then like, you know, they hit a highlight, which they didn't. They actually good for them for not waiting to the last episode, and good for them to not to actually getting to that to the highlight, not just skipping it. Like I don't
Yeah,
know.
like putting it off till next season or season after or whatever. I don't know
Or
what
never,
or
because, like,
never, yeah.
half the anime, like, you can't commit to an actual love interest or something like that, but, yeah, it was, yeah, I don't know, man. That's like I said, this whole season's been solid for the most part. There's a few things that, I did dip out of or, and, there was even I found that even, like, the mediocre stuff was still better than average, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's like a lot of mediocre that was okay. There was like, all right, there's not a ton going on here, but at least it's not unwatchable or really annoying. It's the middle of the pack was a pretty solid middle, like kind of like I don't know, like a really good off the bench. To use a sports analogy, there's a lot of really good off the bench players coming this season. I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I finally got around to finishing, the Ice Blade Sorcerer. That one kind of did more than I expected to, and granted, it's beyond the manga, at least what it was fan translated. Uh, yeah, I was happy with it. Once again, it's somewhere around that, upper mediocre pack. It's just the things it did well, it did pretty well. But there was like something missing about the quality level, and it's just I think that's just might boil down to budget constraints.
Yeah,
Uh, and granted, it did do some, you know, they made free use of some of the characters or like some of the scenarios. Like, yeah, we'll take some liberties here, and once I got past that, like it's like, all right, I'll just move on, and I just won't try to dwell on it. Then I'm like, all right, then I can not be so nitpicky. But yeah, no, it's like I said, I generally like the source material, and uh, the anime was overall entertaining. So I can't complain about that either. So it was all right.
it's good. I'm glad they didn't screw it up.
Yeah, I was afraid, but at the same time, I kind of wonder. I wonder if the manga's actually going to finish the same way, or if it's going to actually be different. Because once again, I'm not actually sure where it is in the current state of the situation. A lot of times with old school anime, uh, the anime would catch up halfway through, like maybe halfway through, and then the series would be like, well, there's the rest of it's not been made yet, so we're just gonna go ahead and rewrite, like write our own ending, and then therefore, like the first 6 episodes are very accurate to the manga, and then the last 6 episodes are wildly different.
Yeah,
That happens a lot back in the day, and Full Metal Alchemist is probably one of the most notorious ones for that. Um, both, I mean, the original series, the ending was still good, and it was still a very solid anime, but then they made up Brotherhood, which Brotherhood follows the
yeah,
rest of the
right,
manga,
right.
correct, and that is that much better,
Yeah, you've always told
for
me I need to watch. I need to watch the original anime first and then Brotherhood because you can't really you can't really enjoy the original if you've already watched Brotherhood.
it.
So
It's the you might as well watch the movie before you read the book, because, that way you'll enjoy the movie, and then when you read the book, you're like, "Oh, dang, there's so much more to it."
yeah,
It's that kind of sentiment,
mm,
so
yeah,
that's kinda how I feel about it, but that's a big ask too. They're like, "Hey, yo, you should watch this entire series, and then you should watch
yeah.
this other entire series."
Yeah, but I mean, if it was a lesser anime, then it would be like, yeah, I'm not really going to do that. I'm just going to go straight to the final, the final product. But since it is Full Metal and it's, you know, oftentimes mentioned in top anime of all time, then I think that's probably worth it and not so terrible to have to rewatch parts of it, to get those aspects of it. Yeah, that's one of the probably the biggest blind spots, in my um in my history of anime that I never saw that, but I'm gonna get to it eventually. There's definitely some others in there too, but yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's been a good season. I think Tomo Chan is probably my I don't know favorite that started this season. It's definitely the one I've been able to kind of keep up with the most. I guess that and Nier. For some reason, I've been thinking of Nier as just sort of this separate thing. It's anime, but it just also doesn't feel like it's with the rest of the pack. I guess because we have our own other podcast for that. So I don't know, but that, and I keep going on and on about Blue Lock. That's still good. I think that's got one more episode that I haven't seen that may have come out already.
Yeah, it's finished now. In fact, on the news front, they actually announced a season 2 for it,
Yeah.
and they also announced a movie.
Whoa, really? Okay. I figured. I mean, that's not so surprising, really, because it's a pretty popular anime. I think it's been pretty widely lauded as quite good. It gets a lot of upvotes and stuff on Reddit discussions and all that stuff. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. I'm glad. Sure, the movie will change nothing and change everything, like most anime movies do. But
I don't know. It's like you got one of two types of anime movies. Like it's either a spin-off that don't mean jack, or it's a recap of the first season. And
yeah,
that's generally the two ways it goes. I mean, the My Hero movies are notorious for being like spin-offs that don't really matter. And then they may or may not mention like one or two references during the next season, but other than that, it really, because that's the thing is
you can't.
you don't want to make it a must-have seen event, and then all of a sudden you go back to the series and you've lost a bunch of people because
Yeah,
you're like, who are these new people and why is that person missing? Well, that's
yeah.
in the movie. You got to find out.
Well, you
Um,
divide your audience. You've already anybody that's going to see the movie. You're pretty much just milking them for some more money. And yeah, the animation is nice, and yeah, you get to have some action set pieces or whatever, but it can't really progress this story all that much, because your bread and butter has been, traditionally been the people that watch week to week or whatever, but Demon Slayer is kind of changing that. They're putting out the whole season as a movie. I don't know if they're gonna be doing that. I think they're doing that again this next season. But anyway, it's definitely a different way to do it, and it seems to be working for them. It definitely gives more credence, a bit more pomp and circumstance. So I don't know, but yeah,
I
it's.
mean that's how they did with the Gundam movies. Like they turned the entire thing into like three movies. Um,
But did they
for
release
the
it
original.
beforehand as a show?
Um, So the original Gundam series came out as a series, and then they went, "Hey, by the way, here's the recap as movies."
I
That
know,
that's been
but
done.
that's but what I'm
You're talking
saying,
about doing it backwards.
doing it where it's not a recap, it's like this is the season as a movie. Like, here you go, 2.5 hour, like 2-ish hours of animation, and it's all rammed together like one big. It's just a movie, but you could have cut
Yeah,
it up.
I didn't watch the train arc, and then there's something else beyond the train arc, I believe. So
Yeah, the next
that's
one.
kind of where I stopped with that one. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, but I
the
mean,
other good
like,
one that I'd mention would be. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on. Yeah, I
uh,
was gonna say the ice guy was also a key highlight for this season.
yeah, for some reason I just dropped off of that. I liked it. I didn't. There's nothing I didn't like about it. Just for some reason, I just couldn't keep going with it. But I was just gonna say, Demon Slayer might be um, a little bit of an exception as far as the actual story goes from the manga, because I'm reading through that. I'm nearly finished with the manga itself, and the arcs in that maybe more than other manga and shows do lend themselves to be about a movie's length or about a season's length. And maybe a lot of other manga is still the same way, but with Demon Slayer it's like, okay, here to here, so many chapters, just enough to fill that many episodes, just enough to fill a 2 hour movie. And it's like, well, yeah, it's pretty much there you go. It's not like I feel like if you were to try to do that with Kaguya-sama, that it wouldn't really work as a movie for those first two seasons because I think there's a little bit too much
Well,
like
it's done. It's the format's way too different. It's done as a
exactly.
it's they're chaptered off in each episode. There's multiple mini arcs, and it's not a overall storyline. So it's it's that yeah. There's no way that you can possibly sum up all these little bits because they're it's comic book style.
Yeah,
It's more like
so
a Saturday or a Sunday
that's
comic.
that's
So
what I'm
you can't
saying. Yeah.
make a yeah.
It's like the
Um,
format of Demon Slayer, but I think that's like a very different example. But I think even some other stuff that I've seen, like like some of the Black Clover stuff that I watched, like that would come kind of close. But I still think some of the arcs are too short to really make a whole movie out of it. I mean, you could if you just added like a whole bunch of filler and stuff like that. That's
it's just
that's
essentially you
possible, but
do any major shonen action comic can do that per season,
make
easily.
it into a movie.
If you could you could just essentially do an abridged version of every Dragon Ball arc into a 2-hour
Well,
movie,
if you
like, without a
abridge it,
problem.
yeah, but
Well,
like
because they have so much there is so much crap in the season itself that you don't necessarily need to have in a movie.
I know, but like with Demon Slayer, there really isn't. It's like 1-to-1 translation pretty much from the manga to the anime. They do add a little bit here and there. I noticed, which kind of just makes it better, honestly, because they don't like add whole runoff sections with this character or that character. That's totally extraneous. They might just add a few extra lines here, an extra handshake there, stuff like that. But anyway, I just kind of been noticing that. I'm gonna keep looking around and see if there's any other shows or any other manga that I end up reading that tend to work that way. But anyway, it's just kind of a thought that I had. But yeah. So overall, good season. I think we both enjoyed it a lot. Haven't looked at too much of what's coming out other than the Demon Slayer next arc is coming out, so I'll be excited for that. Still need to finish the last one, the Entertainment District arc, but that shouldn't take too long. But besides that, there's not too much that I'm specifically really looking forward to. I don't think you've really looked ahead much either, have you?
I never look ahead. I really don't. Occasionally, I'll see key animations for new things, but I don't even bother marking them when they're supposed to be coming out because they'll be like, "Here's a key animation for whatever," and I'm like, "All right, I don't really care because I'll just rather be surprised when they come out." That's why
That's fair.
I never know what's going to be dubbed either. So it's more of like, all right, if I want to get into it, I'm going to get into it, and I'll make the effort to, and then if it does get dubbed, great, and then I can transition to that if I want, but if not, I've already started it, and, it makes it more of a commitment for me, because I'm like, "Well, I'm already this far into it, and I'll finish it so long as it's, of a certain quality." But then again, I like that surprise. I don't watch like, I try not to watch movie trailers or anything like that,
Yeah.
video game trailers for that matter. I'm just like, "You know what? If I know I like it, I know I like it when I see it."
This is how an anime fan gets their gambling fix.
No, those are called, gotchas.
That
You
too.
anime fans will buy blind boxes of trinkets and toys, and there you go. Um, you will play the game that has the collaboration of your favorite character, and you will put money down because you can't get that the double S rank, person you want. So
Triple
yes,
S
that's
rank.
how they get their gambling fix.
Triple S diamond rank. All right.
So
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right. So we actually have a special topic today. And it's one of the earlier ones I wanted to go ahead and do. Um, we're going to be talking about how we define our 1 to 10 rating system. So for a long time, I kind of was against the 10 point rating system. I was like, it's too much like grades in school, blah blah. I, but I think that I think that's still kind of true. But I think that it's just the shorthand that we have to live with. The 1 to 10 is wider than like the like 1 to 5 or 100 point scale or even a 20 point scale. It's just about the right size. And I think I have some theories on why we see some numbers come up more often than others and all that stuff. So we're just going to kind of work through some of that, and Joe is going to take it away with his first. So Joe, how do you theorize and think about your 1 to 10 rating system?
Well, I more or less think of it as a 1 to 5 rating system,
Okay.
and then the 1 to 10 is just me being more nitpicky. That's really about it.
Okay.
Because there's very few things. It's kind of hard for me to. I don't bother labeling like each. If I were to do 1 to 10 system, I don't feel like each number has to have a title associated with it. You know, you'll go see it. You'll see outlets do like number 10. It might be perfect, and I'm like, I don't necessarily think that's the correct word to use. I mean, some might say it's a masterpiece, and I'm like, yeah, I can argue that, or I can see that point of view better. Um, I look at it as like whatever your highest ranking is needs to be like it just needs to be a must see. Like that is, it needs to be seen. You may not necessarily, you don't have to like it. Most people will probably like it, but it's one of those things that like it is. It's a must see as a positive thing because of certain ways. Like you know, film Citizen Kane is often referred to as the best film of all time, but not necessarily for the story. The story has a lot, but it's one of those things that you have to do. You have to do your homework and understand everything about the film and the time period and all this. You have to know about cinematography, and then you can be like, "Oh, now I understand that." And that's
So,
just too much crap. Like you should not have to do that kind of homework
well,
for a simple TV show rating.
yeah, well, okay. So with Citizen Kane specifically, I always wondered why it was considered to be the best film of all time, and so I finally went and tried to look it up, and basically there's a lot of different kind of people write books on this stuff, but basically what I got from Citizen Kane being the best movie of all time is that you have to consider the context of when it was made and what a movie was when it was made, and movies were really bad. Like when Citizen Kane came out, everything that came out before that pretty much was not what you would consider a movie. Like they did not understand a lot of the things we take for granted, like correct lighting and how to light stuff, audio. They didn't frame things properly or transition things properly. So a lot of the stuff that's sort of just boilerplate, what you learn, in the editing room in editing 101, they didn't know that before Citizen Kane. And Citizen Kane, it had a whatever story, a good story or whatever, but it didn't, or but it what it really did was just go, okay, this is how you build a building. Well, this is how you make a movie, and then you can do whatever you want, but these are kind of the things that these are the rules that you sort of can't get away from unless you really, really know what you're doing. You can bend them and stuff like that. But so I was like, oh, okay. So that made me feel like I didn't need to go see it because I was like, oh, it's like every movie I've ever seen, but it was the first one to really do that. Anyway, so that's a bit of an aside. I think you're right about like you shouldn't have to, you shouldn't really have to know that much to enjoy something that's supposed to be like really, really good or the greatest of all time. Um, but it's sometimes that's just like if you're gonna start going back into the past and figuring out why people loved something so much, it's sort of par for the course.
Yeah, but the one thing I'll say that you did incorrect was you should have, after doing the research, you probably should have seen the movie because it's like saying, I read the Cliff Notes, I got the gist of the book. And I'm like,
I mean, I'm not
yeah,
going to sit here and say that it is or isn't the best movie of all time before,
no, it's,
unless I
I'm gonna
see
flat
it,
out say, as
and
far
then
as,
and then I
if you
will go
do,
back and watch it. But I was like, well, okay, if it's like if the reason that it's considered so good is because it's like like the original Mario, it's like, well, I kind of, and I have played Mario, like the original Mario a little bit, I guess, but I haven't played like all the way through. It's a little bit like I don't feel like I need to see that because I'm not going to be arguing for what is the greatest film of all time. I'm just not going to do that.
no. What they do is it's now what I give the film credit for is it's the execution of doing so many great things back to back. And when you understand what makes it great, why those things are significant, that is. But once again, the average person doesn't know that, and therefore they won't get anything out of it. Um, so if you're talking about if you're trying to, if you all you know is, hey, this anime looks good, you don't understand why it looks good because they're doing how many frames, they're doing what kind of color quality, uh, they're actually doing hand drawn versus CG or anything like that, or it's there's a lot of you don't necessarily need to tout all those points. You can, but the average person would just know this looks amazing, and that is all you. That's the gist of it. But if, as far as Citizen Kane goes, it's the fact that they did break the mold. They made the mold for everything else, but they also did. Very few films will do multiple things because they'll take certain key points, but they won't necessarily do all the things that it did in their films, or they try to, and it won't be as successful. Cutting out a hole in the floor so you can get a super high angle shot was something you couldn't do with old film equipment. Nowadays, you can literally just pull out a small camera and you can get that high angle. But when the way they did the high angle and that entire scene is quality, opposed to a lot of current films that just do it for an effect, but they don't actually get the impact that it doesn't carry over the same amount of force, gravitas. So like, yeah, good, you did the thing that Citizen Kane did, but your version isn't as good as their version, and
Mm.
that's where it comes in. And when it comes, like I said, when it comes to um, any type of rating system, that's why I generally go a little more loose and casual, and I do. That's why I think of it as like a 5 point system. And the most bare bones, if I had to explain it to dumb it down, as break it down Barney style, would be literally like you got one, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That
Okay.
is literally all you need to know. Um,
Yeah.
you can add as many numbers as you want in between there and kind of get more granular, but essentially the 3 is middle of the pack, so that'd be, and that's the 50% equivalent. A 1, like, I'd be like a very it's one of those things that if it's a
Well, you said
1,
it.
I would just be like, "Just don't watch it." I
Okay.
would tell people not to watch it, if they were remotely thinking about it, I'm like, "Do not waste your time." But, I wouldn't be like, banging a drum being like, "Hey, everyone, like, ban this film, or ban this anime." I would just be like, "Hey, like, you were thinking about watching I watch anything else." I mean, watch paint dry. That might be my,
Okay.
go-to. Um, and
But
that would probably
I
be,
know I know you often say, like it's like a 7 or like it's like a 6 or an 8 or whatever. But so like, do you just kind of like translate your 1 to 5 system that's in your own mind into a 1 to 10 system when you're
It's
like
easier for other
explaining
people
it?
to understand.
Okay.
So the 7 is, the 7, out of a 10 system would be like a 4 for me because the fact is it would be, it's good to watch. I'm recommending it. Um, and that's the thing is it's something that I would recommend. So in that
Yeah.
case of, it's more than okay.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is like, because if I had to say like you wanted me to like, what's your 6 out of 1 to 10 scale? I'm like, I don't know, 6 is okay. Like it's just like it's
I
just
see.
okay.
There's more of a
I'm not gonna
range.
say
Yeah.
yeah, but that's the thing is I could almost say that about a 5. I'd be like a 5 would be like a meh, it's okay. It's just, but that's why
So like a
if I
7
were
or an 8 would be like a 4, you
Mhm,
know.
and
Yeah.
essentially it'd be like, yeah, I'd recommend this. It's totally worth a watch. Now And if something was a 9 or a 10 to me, that would be, that'd be like on a 5 scale, that'd be a 5, and I'd be like, "Yeah, dude, uh, take the time to watch this.
Yeah.
Like, you should really have this, yeah, it's you gain more out of it when you watch it, like, hold on one second, I can call. Sorry about that. Yeah, but it's the thing is, a 5, in my opinion, of a 1 to 5 scale, or, and the 10 scale is 9 to 10, being like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a masterpiece, but it is totally
Full
worth having
recommendation.
that knowledge in your library, in
Yeah.
your mental noggin, being like, yeah, because this is a movie that's gonna be referenced for a while. Like, if I had to use an older film, I'd be like, "Hey, Akira." Akira does so many things right. It does stumble on a lot of things, especially when you're looking at adapting, a manga into a film, but at the same time, um, from the music to the animation style, to the pop culture referencing, like, because uh it has, so much has spawned from it,
Yeah.
or like, or, and referenced it. So it's totally worth, like, taking your time.
It's so
I like
influential, kind of
it.
like Citizen Kane. It is so
Yeah,
influential that you kind of have to like so much points back to it. Even if it would have figured it out on their own, they are sort of borrowing from that or just directly referencing it and stuff like that. You kind of have to give it its due.
they people have done really awesome montages of the power slide that happens in Akira, and how every other anime has done it with vehicles, cars, bikes as well, bicycles. People have done 3-point landings where they power slide, you know,
Yeah.
and it's that exact camera angle and style, because that was sick as hell, man. That was like, you look at that and like, that is really good. But that's why, because it was so badass, that everyone's like, yeah, this they make a nod to it. Um, it is what it is, right? So I recommend, when it comes to a 9 or 10, it's just like, no, no, dude, I don't care if you like anime or not. You should watch this. That's kind of how I look at it. Uh, because you should have, if you're interested in film, or TV cinema of any kind, that kind of entertainment, visual, like, knowledge, like, it's worth it. Now, if you hate everything that's watched on a TV or something, like, okay,
Yeah.
then,
If you only
if
like
you,
books, then yeah,
then yeah,
maybe maybe a 9 or 10 isn't going to matter to you. But like, it's like, yeah, for those, like, I think what you're like, are you trying to say that like, those, even if maybe it's not your genre or it's not your medium or whatever, that you could recommend that and it would not be totally worthless or boring to someone who's a layman within the
oh
medium,
yeah. I mean, a 9 or a 10 would generally be recommended no matter what. Like, I don't Yeah, if I were to recommend a 9 or a 10 and it's a Western film, and you're like, "I can care less about Westerns. I have 0, like, interest." I'm like, I would still write that a 9 or a 10. I'd still be like, "Dude, take the time to give this a watch," because it's that kind of film. Once again, I can't really claim to a certain extent that they're, like, perfect, because a lot of them aren't. I find that very few things in life are perfect,
yeah, very,
and
almost
it's
nothing
just
is.
like, it's only perfect because no one's pointed out the flaw, and then when you see that, like,
I
that
mean,
one crack, it ruins everything.
yeah, there's like nothing that's like even my favorites that I would consider to be tens. There's still things that are missed in it, things that are wrong, things that could be improved or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's always that's always gonna, even
Oh,
tens aren't perfect. Um,
yeah, that's why the closest I'll say is, like, it's, it is a must watch, is when it comes to from this kind of media. I would say, because some people, if you just say the word masterpiece or something like that, that brings a whole different thing into your mind.
right.
What a masterpiece is to me might not be a masterpiece to you. You may be thinking, more hoity-toity, or, like, like, refined air kind of thing, and, like,
It hypes it way too
no, I'm like,
much. Yeah.
that's why, then you come into it with a different expectation. But I'm just saying it's a must watch. There's enough into it that I believe that you walk away from. But then on the opposite side, like I said, a 1, or a 2 on the bottom of a 10-point scale, I'd be like, dude, and that one is actually, I'm a little more it's a little more broad, because I'd be like, a 1 through 3, I would probably like just out of that, just don't watch it. Don't waste your time. Honestly, unless if you have like, I would say maybe a 3 or 4. Like if you have a specific reason why you have to watch this movie, there's something broken in you. Like I love that voice actor, or I love that actor. Like I
Yeah.
love the director. Like I have to watch everything they've done just because it is ingrained into you. I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But like about a 1 or 2, I'm like, dude, don't do it. You come out of it
Okay.
unless the only thing you gain from it is you get that much closer to death because you wasted that time. Um,
You're never going to get
that's
that
a
time back,
that is
man.
a 1 or 2.
Yeah. So
So
it sounds to me like you kind of base a lot of this around recommendation, like where you would, how strongly you would recommend something. It's like I give it, yeah, you might like it. That would be, 6, 7, somewhere in there. Oh, I think it's a good chance you'll like it. 7, 8, on and on like that. It sort of sounds like I'm hearing a lot of what you would recommend and how you would recommend based on the number system.
yeah, because of the fact that I don't run a review website in which I have to then break things down into specific categories,
Yeah.
or I don't give additional points to soundtracks because what I think is a banging soundtrack, other people may not like. And then it's like I what I'm gonna do, say the sound design, like I'm giving extra points for sound design or cinematography. Like you have to start if you're going to be that granular and technical, then you have to be able to back up why you're giving a score and what made that score possible. And I'm like, no, that's not how
Mm,
I work. And most of the people
okay.
I know, they don't care. Like
Yeah.
now, if they like something, if that they happen to, if I know that they like certain things, like hey, um, a buddy of mine tried doing like did a Foley class, and he had Foley
Wow.
artistry class in like in high school, and he realized how much that sucked, but he walked away with a huge appreciation for it. He's like, that's tough. And I'm like, well, if you like that, then check out the sound for the like they do this really well. You know, and you'll notice good sound effects to things, as you listen. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know, it's just one of those things that I give recommendations based off of what I like and what I think people would generally like. So that's why a lot of my sevens, are essentially like, yeah, they're good. They're solid. I would recommend it. I don't necessarily say you have to watch it. But I'm like, dude, it's if you're even considering, you're like, I don't know if I want to spend my time to watch it. I'm like, dude, totally watch it. It is a good watch. Um, it's you're feeling, you will not waste your time, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I think we're fairly similar in several regards. Um, for me, I kind of think that my system is it's closer to a 5 point system in how it's actually used. Um, but it's more like 5 to 10, or maybe even 4 to 10. I think that on a true 1 to 10 system, because I sat down and thought about this, I was like, okay, so what is what is an actual one? What would a one really be? And for me, I was like, it would have to be basically just unrecognizable trash. Just, someone's in college or high school or even middle school. And not that those people always make bad stuff, but just someone that really has no idea what they're doing. And they make something and they put it out on YouTube. There's plenty of ones on YouTube. It's just totally, dog crap. A two is slightly more than that. Maybe somebody knows a little bit more about what they're doing. Some semblance of structure, but still just very bad. A three is another step up from that, you know, and that's where you're getting into, like I put like The Room on here, a lot of college films, things like that. They kind of land in this three zone. I think four is about the worst, in my opinion, that I see on TV. That's actually a studio would actually make and put out. and that's bad. That's like just that's really bad. Um, it would be something that you would just go like, this is boring or this is bad. I don't really know why. Um, so I think that most stuff that we see kind of lives in that 5 to 10 zone. I think that a 5 or a 6 is like it's there's some good like a 5 is like it's kind of just boring. It doesn't really do anything wrong. It's like maybe the jokes are they're old, they're not really unique. The storyline is ho hum, but but it understands how to make an anime. It understands how to make a movie. It understands what the medium requires of it at the basic level. They've been to school, so to speak. Um, and a 6 is a step up from that. It's got some good things, but it doesn't make any major mistakes. But it also doesn't really blow you away with anything special. A 7 is where I think most things that I end up finishing, 6 and 7 is where most things I end up finishing actually land. 7 is, to me, is almost all good. Maybe one or two aspects that make it stand out. Probably a few things that it does wrong. It might even do a lot wrong, but if it has some things that really make it shine, like, man, this was a really good idea, or that was a really good idea, and the rest of it is not great, it just kind of falls flat in some places or severely lacking in others, then it is possible to kind of bring that to round out to like a 7. So 8, 9, and 10. So with an 8, to me, that's very good. Well executed. Nothing that you could really easily call a mistake. With a lot of interesting ideas, good characters. The story flows well, and it's just really good. I think you're gonna get one or two of these a season. You're gonna get 1, 2, 3 of these a season, depending on how strong the season is. A 9 is we're getting into that word, like that one word that you said, masterpiece. We're getting into masterpiece territory. So but it's probably not. It's probably not a masterpiece, but it is getting close. It's doing things that are rare. It completely understands the medium. It's probably playing with the rules of the medium and breaking the right ones, bending others, and kind of making you go like, what is this? Like, what else could be done with if you like went further in this direction? It's doing a lot to kind of to like change your mind, and it's doing technically everything, pretty much everything right. I think a 9, 9.5 would be where I'd put something like Evangelion. I think that show, for all of its many flaws and things that I really hate about it, it is doing a lot that is really interesting and wild that hadn't really been done before and hasn't really been done all that much as far as I've seen since, at least not in the same way. And that can be argued, but I just wanted to throw out an example of what I think of like a 9.95 is there. I think you'd be lucky to get one of those a year. I think maybe 5 in a decade would be a pretty decent decade. I think that a lot of the Ghibli films kind of fall in that zone. At least some of the ones that I'm kind of thinking of.
Okay, because I'm like, Ghibli has not been the same studio that it once was.
I guess what I really mean by that is Miyazaki, like the Miyazaki films. And there's Ponyo probably would not fall in that category, but like Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, and Princess Mononoke. I think that those
I think Howl's. I would have to debate that one because I don't think it's that good. I think his
definitely
early
has
works
problems.
were phenomenal. And
Nausicaa.
I would yeah, so, I mean, you got Nausicaa, Totoro, Kiki, Castle in the Sky or Laputa if you know it by that name. But then you got stuff like Pocoroso, which is not that, in my opinion, was not that hot. You have, uh, uh, shoot, the the one about the middle school kids, the kid learning to play make violence. I'm drawing a blank now. Um, Amoy de Poroporo, I think that was in the Japanese. It was Amoy de Poroporo and Kimi no Masaba, which is like
Okay.
the two family ones. So there's one with the two middle schoolers falling for each other, and that was really cute. And then they made The Cat Returns as a sequel. But that original one was an amazing little story. And then the other one was about an office worker woman who returns to her hometown and she's remembering the past. And that one is also really great, but necessarily, you have to be a part of the right demographic for that one. And
Right. I don't
but like I
mean
said,
to say
Ghibli's
that
old stuff.
everything that Miyazaki has done is a nine. Like, and I could see how you would argue against Howl's Moving Castle being a nine. It definitely has a lot of problems with the story, and I don't want to I don't want to sit here and litigate the whole thing. But I mean, but like for many of those kind of golden age of Miyazaki films, the technical mastery over the animation is what propels that to high eights, low nines, stuff like that. Like that is where I would say, okay, so like that's an example of like something about the animation being so good and so masterfully done that it overrides maybe a lackluster story or some parts of it that aren't quite what you would say, oh, this is amazing.
Then what's your 10?
So I think a 10 is probably a 10 is one of the greatest works in the medium. Um, this to me should probably happen only once a decade. It's possible that it would happen more, but I think that it's that these kind of works that you would consider, hey, this is an actual 10 is like it's freaking amazing. It's the best thing that you're going to see literally that decade. And sometimes maybe there are decades where there isn't one. I think there's definitely one in the 90s. As far as like actual like anime TV shows go, I think that for me, Princess Mononoke is pretty dang close. If not a 10, it's got to be right there. And this is highly subjective. This is definitely going to hit that sweet spot of everything that you like or whatever as well. But it's going to have to be something that you would have a really hard time you'd have to really be nitpicking to say like, well, this was bad or that was bad. But these are the kind of things that kind of transcend the medium. These are the works that make people who don't even like that medium, who don't even like anime, go, damn, that was really freaking good. So it's extremely rare. But yeah, I think the
Well,
only
you've been referencing movies a lot, but what about TV shows?
well,
Because you haven't mentioned any 9 or other than Evangelion. Yeah, that was the only 9 that you mentioned out of TV.
well,
Are
as far as tens go, I don't want to say what I think is a 10 because it's going to be another topic at some point on its own that we've kind of kept back already, and I want to continue to do that. So I want to say that like the only 10 that I would be willing to argue for is Princess Mononoke right now. As far as nines go, a lot of the Miyazaki movies, I would say Spirited Away is probably up there. Maybe a few others I could argue. Evangelion is a nine, I think. and there's probably more that I could think of if I sat down and goes like, okay, this is like a 9. I think a lot of people argue, um, kind of conversely. I think a lot of people argue that Attack on Titan is like a 9 or a 10, and I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think it's got way too many weaknesses in the story and the pacing to really be. It's definitely not a 10 in any way, shape, or form. If you think that, you're probably very young. But 9, depending on how well it ages and stuff like that, and how well they actually end the actual anime and not the manga. A 9, you could maybe argue it, but I think it would still be pretty hard. Anyway, so we'll maybe go through some of those again on another podcast. Once I
Yeah,
can,
because for me, I'd say I had like once again I stopped at Titan after like season 3 or whatever it was. Um, I can't even remember anymore. I think he was kidnapped, by the other Titans,
yep,
and they were starting to venture outside the wall, and like they were starting, like that to that point. I'm like, this is like I would, like
I know, I'm with you.
I was not very. I mean, apparently it picks up better, which makes me I partially want to see it again,
It, it,
finish it out.
it
But I'm waiting for it to be completely finished before I would go ahead and try to binge that. Um, because it was one of the things if they completely with the ending, I'm like, well, then why would I waste all my time then?
yeah,
Um,
and it's
but up until that point, the series had a really strong opening. Like, you're like, oh wow, this really could go somewhere, and then you realize it doesn't go anywhere for a very long time. And that was just like I would have if out of 10, I would have probably gave it like a 6. I'd be like, yeah, it's okay. If it hits your kind of the things you like, then yeah, this is probably gonna be high up on your scale. But at the same time, I'm like, there's other things that are better, and you might want to spend your time with that. But adversely, if you do watch it, it's not like you're completely wasting your time. So it's not, that's why it's just 6 is like an okay, like that's it. Um, there's depending on how you do it, can easily tank it, or I can see it being brought up, but I don't know. It's just I'm very, like I said, you mentioned it before yourself, how Aaron's character finally develops into an actual like character.
yeah,
Um,
it kind of has
but
some
for
backbone. Yeah,
seasons, he was just nothing but garbage. And I was just like, all right, well, that's why everyone liked Levi, because Levi was a person.
pretty much why they brought
He
him
had
in.
an
Yeah,
and then, so everyone's like, "Yep, they kind of defaulted him as male lead." And then you had was it Misaka as the,
yep,
but like she was also bland as crap. She had just the
yeah.
she
She
was
kind
just
of
like
doesn't really
she was
do.
psycho waifu.
She doesn't really do that much, in the later parts, the later seasons, especially those middle seasons. Like she's in it a lot early on, and she's like the only one who's competent with, the weapon system that they have to use. Um, but like, like later on, she sort of drops out of the background and then like comes back in this most recent season. If you wanted to call it an 8, I wouldn't argue with you. I think 6 is a bit low for what they're doing.
Once again, like I said, once I see that if I were to be caught up, that'd be different. But from what I saw it too, it was most definitely a 6 in my opinion. But but that was also they've also done so much more from it since. So
Yeah,
I'm missing apparently all the good stuff. I got out before it got good.
I guess
So
so. But you might be surprised that you didn't get out before it got good. That you got out when it was good, as good as it was going to get. That might just be the way that you're gonna think about it. It's tough and it's super subjective and stuff like that. I think there's going to be stuff but there's a lot of stuff that I hear people say, "Oh, that's a 10." And I know that they're just sort of saying, "Oh, I love that," or whatever. They're not really thinking about it as a critic. They're not really thinking about it like objectively, as objective as possible. What is good about this versus what's bad, blah, blah. But there is a lot of stuff that gets thrown around as being a 10. And I'm just like, no, it's just really not.
See, I guess on my side, I also try not to compare things to I try to compare it amongst things of its own kind. So like you're sitting there like, yeah, I'm looking at legit film or legit anime, and then I'm like, and compared to, a middle schooler, hot trash, so like that middle schooler thing is just garbage. And so or like a high
No,
school slash, student film, like someone's first foray, and that's a one. And I'm like, yeah, but we're talking about things that actually made it through a production, like, studio. Someone's actually funding this, not just someone's, like, homework assignment, and
but
that's why it's hard
I'm thinking
for
about
me to
like
compare it to that.
all of art. Like if you were gonna like all of it all, from one being like the very worst to 10 being like the very best of anything that anyone could do. And the reason is because like, you if you are a middle schooler or you are a middle school class, they could do something great. Even compared to like a major studio, just working for free out of their own homes or whatever. And people do awesome stuff and put it on YouTube. People do stuff that I would consider to be like 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10, but probably I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. But, 6, 7, 8 for sure, just with, their own free time and their own money, having no professional, experience at all. So it is possible. I'm just using that like what you might have seen or what you might think of as a college project, high school project, and going like, okay, this, that is the 1 through 3 zone of like they just are totally missing something. An actual studio would almost never do a 1 through 3. It's possible. Anything's possible, and I could probably there's one or two that I can think of that I would might drop down into that 3 zone. But I also think that it's pretty hard if you're being paid to make something. It's pretty hard to get even that bad.
Yeah, but see, that's why when it comes to judging, like, anime, that's why, like, when, I look at what's been actually published, like, what is actually out there for you to, to purchase copies of, not just, what you can find, trolling the internet. And, you know, because the studios and need to be held to a certain standard, but at the same time, that's kind of what I'm grading off of based off of, you know, their things. Because like, once again, if you're gonna be like, "Well, these people on the side, they made this thing, and, like, look, ours is better than theirs." I'm like, "Well, it should be because you actually have real money backing you." But for example, one of the worst things I've seen in recent memory was, a soccer anime called, it was, Shoot, like, Goal to the Future or some bull crap like that,
Uh,
and this is, uh yeah, what I would consider the most recent, like, trash fire of an anime I've seen. The animation isn't really great. It's not straight up, like, bad, like, it doesn't look like, I don't know, Knights of Sidonia, the, CG, or like that really gritty bad quality. But the animation isn't what I would say good. The character models aren't really that great. The story is just bumbling, and it's supposed to be a spiritual sequel to an old classic series, and they just completely it's just crap all the way through. There's nothing. I find that it was a waste of time, and it's more like, I ended up watching it because I'm like, "Is this has to be getting better, right? This is supposed to be connected to an older series that was, like, beloved kind of thing," and I'm like, "No, this was just, uh,
it it, it
it it's like taking a steel wool to the brain," and you're like,
uh,
"Okay, well, now that my brain has been reset and I now have this new low bar, I can now respect like, I can easily watch something, I can watch a 5 with a little more appreciation."
so
Um,
so you're thinking about it in a little bit more relative terms, like relative to what other studios, it's like I'm going to watch an anime and it's going to be from a studio. It's going to be, something that's airing in Japan, and that
their
is that
standards should be
and that is
the
that
standards should
arena.
be better.
It's like this is the
Yeah.
league, and then there's a 1 to 10 within that league. So you're thinking about things like in those terms, like this is like the worst you could possibly do within this like general area of produced anime. This is a one, this is a five, blah blah. That kind of
That's why it's more based on my recommendation. That's why I look
I
at it
see.
as how I would stand because once again, that this same term can be used like my scale, like mentality is what I use for if I were to do comparing video games. Because once again, it's like the kind of what I feel. Maybe I'm taking your rating system out of context, but uh, like you're looking at it as like, well, you know, um if you're buying something, if you're buying a physical copy of a game, and it's like, well, this is better than that Flash game that I played that I saw, someone quickly made. It's just like, well, it should be. It has a lot more stuff put into it. But you're comparing like, because you're comparing everything as a whole. I'm like, I understand uh, where you come from, but at the same time, I feel that you have to adapt the situation. That's why I look at it based off a recommendation. I don't like. I'm not going to say like if you watch a 10, a ranking of 10, like this is going to be like. This is transcending. This is like a fucking monkey touching a monolith and then evolving because of that piece of medium. Um,
This is a
I'm
monkey
like,
throwing a
no.
bone in the air, and it
So
just
some people look at real art and they like they like I saw I saw the Mona Lisa and my life changed. I'm like, really? I'm like, good for you, I guess. But that's and then I'm like, well, I compared to the Mona Lisa, this this is garbage drawing. I'm like, yeah, well, you know,
okay.
those are apples and oranges.
So
So that's why I have a hard time
the way that I
with
think
you
about it
comparing like YouTube.
in a very simple way to express it is I ask myself, was I entertained? Did I enjoy that? Did I get something out of that? And so it doesn't matter if they spent $50 million making this game, or it was some kid that put it together in an afternoon on Flash. Like it doesn't that like that money whatever doesn't matter. I might try to like it more if I spent $70 on it versus zero. I might give it some more time before I totally like return it or throw it away or whatever. But like as far as like the actual rating when it's all said and done, if that Flash game was freaking awesome, then I'm gonna rate it higher. Like Ixion. I mean, I played that game for like freaking 60 hours, and there's things that I don't like about it for sure, but there's games that I've spent more money on and maybe even played longer that I didn't like as much as I liked Ixion. Um,
Yeah, but I mean, as far as if I'm paying, like, I would actually go the opposite way. If I'm paying money on it, I would actually be that much more harsh on it because of the fact, because you're paying, like, you're expecting more from it. It should be, um, you're it is at it's presenting itself
I
as
see.
a higher quality piece.
Okay.
Therefore, I would be more strict on how I look at it. Um, while I'd be more forgiving of something that is just freeware because I'm like,
Mm,
yeah, this is good for what they were able to do, and but that's why I would scale my thought mentality behind it.
there's the recommendation thing again. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna recommend something, yeah, you do have to take the price into account. Um, I think everything kind of more or less becomes free these days after not very long. Maybe games get a lot cheaper after a couple of years. So I kind of think about it in terms of um, like in 5 years, in 10 years, where is this going to hold up? And games obviously don't hold up as well after so long because they are so based on technology, which is always changing. So games is a little bit different thing. Scoring in games, yeah, you have to consider the price because it can become very expensive. But as far as like anime goes, then I feel like I can be a little bit more ignorant of the price because a lot of people are just are just torrenting it, just watching it for free, or they're just watching it on Crunchyroll or High Dive or whatever. And it's like it's all there. You're paying your $10 a month no matter what. So uh, like you can watch this or watch that. So it's sort of
That
all
helps. That
it
does
all
help, but,
flows.
like, back I also came from the back in the day where you were buying the VHSs or buying the DVDs, and then you'd have something like Blue Sub 6 come out, and there was only, like, 6 episodes to that, but each one there were 6 DVDs. They literally had only 1 episode on a DVD, and they were charging you, like, $30
That
a
is old
DVD.
school. That is old
It
school.
was like, we all were like, "You that is insane. Why would you" you know? Yeah, it was completely asinine, but
That
that
was
was
a
the
gotcha
Japanese
game in the
model.
old days.
Yeah, so anime was always, financially a ripoff for, like, the longest time.
Yeah.
Um, and, like, there was old merch that used to say, like, "Anime crack is cheaper." Um, so,
I mean, that's
yeah, my
almost
wife
a
had a bag
business.
that had that on it.
That's almost like you're rating the business at that point. Yeah, I mean there are things like that. I I think that I think you're right when it comes to recommendations, especially with something fairly new. You do have to take price into consideration for sure. But yeah,
But at the same time, I'm like I said, if I'm looking at stuff that's been being produced or as mainstream, for studio stuff, I'm like, well, I'm expecting a certain quality, but and vice versa, or like you're expecting quality from a certain type of shows. Like if you're gonna be, you're not gonna look at Shinchan or like um the morning anime crowd for the kids cartoons, and you're like, yeah, you know what, Yokai Watch, I'm gonna rate this on the same level as I'm gonna rate like on the same level as Evangelion and Bebop, or something like that. You're like,
I would.
no, you really
this is
don't.
this is a
um
4.
you know, you look at it and it's like, okay, for a kids show, Pretty
uh,
Cure is a like a blank out of blank or
no,
something,
those kids
or
need to
because
learn.
you look at it and then like, okay, well, then you look at something like a One Piece and you're like, well, I don't, and you just walk away from One Piece because you realize that you're not going to scale that wall. Um,
You see your kid
but no,
watching Yokai Watch, you go sit down by him and you go, son, this is a 4 out of 10. And then you get up and walk away.
but that game was actually more like a 6, but Um, yeah, no, that's you can't. I think that's why that's primarily the reason why I feel that my scaling has to be based off recommendations, because in the end, whether it's be you pay financially or pay with you're paying with your time no matter what. Everyone pays with their time,
Yeah.
and that's why it has to be anything that's a 9 or a 10 would end up being a must watch. And that is pretty safe to say, hey, I don't care if you don't like this genre. If you don't like sci-fi, you know what? But you really should watch this.
Yeah.
This is really good. Or I'm like, yeah, I know you don't like you look at anime as a cartoon, but guess what? It's not, and this is a prime example of why. You
Tech
should really take a look at
Technically
this.
it is a cartoon. but,
For
but I know what you
Americans,
mean.
they
I know
still
what you
look at
mean.
it, no, because there's like, dude, you got Family Guy or you got Evangelion. There's a huge difference.
There is a
Um,
bit of a
but then
difference.
again, if you're gonna be like, hey, well, technically in Japan, all animation is anime, so The Simpsons are anime.
I mean,
Um,
as if you define a cartoon as like something that's not real but it's animated, then the Marvel movies are all half cartoon now too. So it's like, who's the real anime lover, huh? But I would say that for like the way that I think about recommendation is, I think about it on a binary system, like either yay or nay, and and I have to consider the person. I think you do that as well. Um, and I'll just go like, well, if they like sci-fi or they like this or they like that, I'll go, yeah, Craig, I think that you would like this. I think that you would. I recommend that you watch this, but I don't want to tell them how much or really even think about that, because I always kind of get lost in the weeds there. I'm like, would they enjoy it? Yeah, and then I'll recommend it, and then most of the times I've recommended something to someone in that way, they come back and they end up liking it more than I even thought that they would. And a lot of it was just like, I don't want to hype it. I don't want, because I want to give them the best chance to like it. And I think hyping it, which I know you don't do, but I think hyping it is like the the mistake that most people make when they are kind of recommending that. I think you do a really good job though. Like when you're recommending, you're like, yeah, you like this and like that. I think that you would probably enjoy this. It's pretty good. And then you kind of leave it alone. So
Yeah, I try to
good
leave it as
on you.
quietly as Erased is a prime example. Is I really like that one, but I try not to tell too much of it because the less amount you know, the better. I do try to tell people, um, I guess when to expect things to get like when the actual thing starts, right? Because
Mm,
sometimes some shows, the first 2 or 3 episodes are not really that existent. So I'm like, hey, try to watch 4 episodes. I mean, just and then by the time if you know you're not into it, then that's fine. But that's I try to give an expectation to a certain point. When the reason why I say something like that is because you got something like Erased, where I'm like by the end of the first episode, probably, you kinda get a good gist, but if you make it to the second episode, if that's not for you, then you're done. I mean, it's safe to bounce.
yeah,
Um, but then something like Steins Gate, um,
you gotta let that
arguably like an 8. Some people would say a 9. Um,
highly
it's
rated.
the only reason why is like, hey, first 12 episodes, they're just okay. They're just okay. Um, Something happens and then it's a ball rolling down a hill. It picks up momentum and you're really interested. But
Yeah,
but it takes 12 episodes before you get invested. I'm like, that's a big ask. It
yeah.
really is.
So
And so I'm like,
okay,
just,
yeah. So
so
you've
that's why
got
I try to give a little bit of, like heads up, but I'm like, I really like it. And, but honestly, if you're not gonna be like, no one video games have been that way lately too. Oh yeah, the first 30 hours were like, it wasn't until the first 30 hours, then it gets good. And I'm like, no, dude, we're done.
oh
I'm
man.
like, if it takes me that long to find the fun, then you did something wrong.
Like I may as well have started learning piano for 30 hours. Like, geez, I'll probably be getting kind of good at piano after 25 hours and enjoying it sooner than 30. Man, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, but that has happened, the last couple of years. There had been a handful of games that, it doesn't really pick up until a certain point. I'm like, "Nah, dude, good for you. I'm glad you found that fun." But at the same
Yeah.
time, at one point, are you just like Stockholm syndrome? Like, I have to, I have to like this. I've put too much effort and time into it. Um, but but yeah, as I recommend, if you're recommending something, I agree with you as well. You don't want to overly hype it because the more you hype
Yeah.
something, it's like the Oscars. A movie might be really good, but because everyone starts talking about it, like,
And
for me, it almost has a subconscious adverse effect. Like, hey, um, like, No Country for Old Men. That's really, like, this is great.
that's
This,
good.
that, the other thing. Yeah, it's actually a really good film, but because it got so hyped so much, it was like, I took a sweet, sweet time getting around to it, like
Yeah,
years.
you kind of go like, oh yeah, I bet I won't like this movie. I know I do that with movies that I hear like way too much about, and sometimes I don't even try to. It just kind of like, stuff like that. But
What
uh,
I did that with a buddy. I recommended, he's like, he liked Lonely Island, the music group, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, and you like Andy Samberg? Then you should watch their movie, Pop Star." And he's like, "Oh yeah, really? I didn't realize." And I just told him that, and so I let him borrow my DVD, and then he just never got around to it. And
uh,
he's like, he had it for like 3 months to the point where I'm like, you know what, F it, I'm gonna start bugging you every day for it, just every day, just to watch it because I can. And then he's just like, I'm like, "I know you're never gonna watch it." "Oh, no, I'll get around to it." "No, you're not. Don't lie to me." And then I'm like, "You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna start finding all the other movies you like and start hyping those up. So therefore you won't watch any movie ever again." You know?
oh, dude, that's diabolical. You're an evil, a genius.
just I'm like, hey, you eventually get around to, or see, I'm like, hey, well, how's your weekend? He's like, yeah, it was all right. I didn't really do much. I'm like, well, you know what you should have done is watch Pop Star. Um,
Oh, that's
but
good.
yeah, it's become a joke, and it's funny because a few of us in the office had recommended it early in the beginning, and then it was one of the other guys was like, "Hey, dude, it's on streaming now," and it's like, "Oh, really? Cool." It's like, and he just never got around to it. I'm like, so we all started like just it was a group effort to just bag on him for it, and I'm like, he'll never watch it, and that's fine. He might watch it with I'm like I've to this point I have hyped it so much that you'll never watch it, and that's fine with me. But now, I will forever pick on you for the fact that you never watched it.
It's good that you were able to turn that into some fun for yourself and just like use them as a punching bag. That's pretty great. All right, well, that's pretty good. I think we got some good stuff out of that. We definitely understand more how each of us thinks about our rating systems, and now everyone else does too. So yeah, I think that's gonna do it for us here today on another Damn Anime podcast. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.
Bye.